administration about the potential need to bring in the National Guard and or the military?
We have made it clear to the federal government that in just 3 simple words, we got this.
Tuesday, there appeared to be federal officers there, possibly deploying some type of gas onto the protesters there. What do you know about what happened there, and do you anticipate federal officers engaging in any protests tomorrow?
Do you want to take the first part?
Sure. So we have been coordinating extensively with our federal partners. As the mayor just said, as the commissioner just said, we got this. We've got hundreds of specially trained officers who are expert at disorder control, who know how to do this very well. And we have been dealing with protests for certainly years, months. This is no different. The causes change, but the response is the same. And so that coordination, which is ongoing, and that communication, we are quite confident that we are able to police these independently and quite effectively.
The other night, was that like
The canister.
working with the federal officers there? Was that intentional?
So, obviously everybody was on the scene together. Federal agencies who are responsible for the force protection of their own personnel involved in that particular incident, having an interaction with protesters. So our message has been very clear. Our communication with federal partners has been very clear that we are there to help police the protests so that the federal government can do what it needs to do while we are keeping the public safe.
Right next to you, Allie. Nia Clark from New York One. Could you just thank you? Could you just elaborate on the extra security at religious institutions, including Jewish ones? How many extra officers are patrolling these institutions around the city?
Yep. Starting last night, we deployed a lot of extra officers to religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites across the city. That heightened deployment has continued into the day, and it will continue for the next several days as long as it's necessary. As always, we don't give out specific numbers, but it is occurring across every borough of the city.
Katie?
Hi, this question is for the mayor, for the commissioner, or for Ms. Weiner. I know you mentioned it earlier, Mayor Adams, that there are outsiders in here. You mentioned earlier this week that there's outside agitators. You found here this last year, I know, with the Columbia protests. Do you have any evidence or anything you can show us, proof that there is a concentrated outside agitator? Because right now, I know from last year, there wasn't really a lot of evidence to back that up, and I'm curious if you have any more information.
Okay, you said as last year there was no large amount. That's the biggest mistake we make when we try to define the situation. There were outside agitators on the Columbia campus when, at the time, Assistant Commissioner Daughtry and Chief Shell was there. There were individuals who were part of taking over the Hamilton Hall that did not attend the school. Some of them were professionals. Folks, when you have 5,000 people on the street, all you need is 20 to be an outside agitator. You don't need 4,999. You have a small number of people that are professionals. We saw it during the Black Lives Matter situation when I met with former Mayor Bill de Blasio. They were training people to have glass bottles filled with ice, bricks, knapsacks, all of the tools that were used to aggravate. And so get out of your mind that an outside agitator must be the numerical majority of the people who are participating. Outside agitators go in, they rile up the crowd, they start throwing items at the police, they start doing things to get the police aggravated. They use fire bombs to burn cars. We saw that during the BLM movement. That's what an outside agitator is. And so whomever is saying there are no outside agitators coming in and they're professionals, Antifa and others, they just don't understand policing. You're not the majority. That's not your goal. You're not going there to be the majority. You're going there to hijack a movement so that you can aggravate and create disorder in the city. That's what the outside agitator. They were there on Columbia, and they're there at many of our marches. And so if you want to write a story about there are no outside agitators, feel free to do that. We're going to protect the people of this city based on intelligence, not rumors.
I was just asking if you had any intelligence to share for this current.
No, no. Go to the next person.
Hi, Mayor. Just to push the needle forward on training and lessons learned from the BLM protests, talk about some of the training implemented in the NYPD as you guys prepare for tomorrow.
Mike?
Hi, I'm Michael Gerber. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters. And, following the Floyd protests, DOI did a detailed report focusing on policies and procedures, and a number of recommendations. We adopted those recommendations. So there are lots of pieces to that, but I think most critically was the adoption of department policy in the patrol guide, specifically about the policing of First Amendment activities, outlining responsibilities, outlining how we go about maximizing the exercise of First Amendment rights while also maintaining public safety, enforcing the law. And then we train widely across the department on that, from people who are starting out as police officers to our executives. They all receive training on that new policy.
Rocco?
Along the lines of the same topic, the woman now has a First Amendment protest supervisor. What has that supervisor brought to the table? What is new now in how the police handles things? And why was the first supervisor, Chief Haywood, replaced after such a short time?
So there are a number of different pieces to that. So in the protest settlement, we are coming to the tail end of Phase 1. We have not yet started Phase 2. And in Phase 1, we have developed a variety of new policies and procedures and training that speak specifically to the terms of the protest settlement. The FAA executive, the First Amendment Activities executive, as per the settlement, is an executive in the Chief of Department's office from the operational side. And that person has a variety of responsibilities under the protest settlement. Now, that person is not a lawyer. That person is not giving legal advice. That person is not the incident commander. But that person, among other things, is responsible, and really this is going to kick in Phase 2, so we're not there yet. But in Phase 2, that person will be responsible for, first of all, a variety of administrative tasks and record keeping in terms of protests. And then connected to that, as part of DOI's oversight role, when they are reviewing particular protests, so that FAA executive will be responsible for making sure they have the records they need, but then also for interacting with them, for explaining to them what happened, getting feedback from them, and helping really lead the department in its interactions with DOI in its oversight function.
As far as the change at the top, the chief, 3 months ago, that is a new chief.
We, as always, do not comment on individual personnel moves.
Time for one more. Sorry, Mark.
Hey, everybody. Just a couple of questions. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the deployment of officers in light of sending extra teams to religious institutions and the protest happening at the same time. How are those decisions going to be made? And obviously, you've mentioned the 34,000 officers that are going to be out there, but could you talk a little bit about rotating them, moving them, deploying them while all these things are happening? And the other question I had was, what's the search been like online in places like Telegram or in the dark web to sort of find out what some of these agitators who have been known to the department with either the Columbia protests or in other things, like what's being done to keep an eye on them or to sort of get ahead of what they might be doing or planning for these demonstrations?
Let me start with the first part. In terms of how we move our resources around, as I mentioned, we are activating our Joint Operations Center tomorrow morning. So the movements of resources in the department will all be controlled by the Joint Operations Center as it relates to the protest activity, and Chief Shell will be running the operations in the JOC tomorrow. Rebecca, do you want to speak to the second part?
Sure. So this is very fundamental to what our intelligence personnel do in coordination with their federal partners and partners around the world in the private sector. So this is something we deal with every day. There's, of course, a large public manifestation of both protest and obviously a lot of online calls for civil disobedience and other activity. But we are knee-deep in monitoring for threats of all sides, of all kinds around the world every day. We are, unfortunately, have become quite accustomed to dealing with a bubbling up of conflict overseas and potential ramifications here in the city at the same time, as we have a very different scenario playing out across the country, namely these protests, that some of which have involved acts of civil disobedience and even violence. So this is what we do every day. We have large teams. They are quite good at what they do, and we have wonderful partners. So we're confident we're going to be able to get through not just tomorrow, but whatever is on our horizon.
And we should, we want to be clear and want to keep in mind, we have 8.5 million people in New York City. You have a protest of 5,000, 10,000. The loudest, they are not the numerical majority. We saw a video that went viral of a woman was just trying to get to work. And the level of disrespect that was being shown to her, it impacts 8.5 million people. When you block traffic, that emergency vehicle can't respond to the heart attack. When you decide that you're going to burn police vehicles, you are showing a level of display and disorder. When you break windows of shops and glass, people work inside there that provide for their family. That's what we're going to balance. And we're not going to romanticize what disorder does to a city. You see it being played out across this country. We can't allow it to happen here. That is our job. Our job is to allow that mother to go to her job. Our job is to allow family members to pick up their loved ones from school. Our job is to make sure emergency vehicles can get to where they have to go to provide services for New Yorkers. We have 8.5 million people in this city, and we're not going to allow a numerical minority to impact the quality of life that they deserve. That is what we're going to do. We do it well. No one does it better than us, and we're going to do it tomorrow on the 14th.